Բարի երեկո, Օրակարգ հարցազրույցի հյուրը Հայաստանում ՄԱԿ-ի մշտական ներկայացուցիչ Բրեդլի Բուզետոն է. Good evening, Mr. Busetto. Let me congratulate you on the 25th anniversary of UN activity in Armenia and also on the 72nd anniversary of UN itself.
Thank you.
What are the achievements so far?
Well, thanks first of all for being with me here today to celebrate the 25th anniversary of Armenia's entrance into the UN, but also UN's work here in Armenia. So really the United Nations is not just about doing stuff, but it's about values and ideals. It's about a global community, about aspiring for prosperity and dignity for all, and for the safeguarding of human rights, and for tolerance, and for developing a sustainable planet that we can all live on. When we first started here in Armenia 25 years ago, our work was really, really different because Armenia was really different. Armenia was in the middle of a very violent conflict, and so our work was really about focus almost solely on just humanitarian relief, providing food and shelter and medicines to people that were affected by war. So it's really fascinating for me to think, and a privilege for me to be here 25 years later and think about how Armenia has progressed and developed, but also to think about how the UN's work in Armenia has changed so much. Now our work is much more about keeping Armenia connected to the rest of the region and the world. Just recently we finished modernizing the borders with Georgia, between Armenia and Georgia. We also just recently helped Armenia in its first new parliamentary elections in the new system. We brought technology that made the elections much more fair and accessible,
transparent maybe.
And transparent, and I think it was a real milestone for democracy in this country. So we're working now promoting social entrepreneurship. So our work is much, much different, and so as Armenia has changed, so has the work of the UN, really.
As you spoke about the conflict, lately UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres greeted the meetings of Azerbaijan and the Armenian president. So what do you think? Can UN have a far step forward in this field?
Well, as you probably know, the UN doesn't have a political mandate here in Armenia. We have no direct political role in trying to resolve the conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh, but certainly the UN stands behind and stands with the OSCE Minsk group in support of a speedy and resolution finally, and a peaceful resolution of this conflict. So what the UN can do is it just can offer its good offices and supports of the Minsk group co-chairs and of the two principles of Armenia and Azerbaijan to make sure that they abide by the ceasefires and keep things as quiet as possible and promote as much as possible a speedy resolution of the conflict.
Let's speak about UN achievement goals again. What
Sure.
is UN agenda of 2030 for Armenia?
Well, maybe I'd like to talk a little bit more about some of the things that we've done over the past years, and then we can talk a little bit about the 2030 agenda if you don't mind.
Yeah, what have you done and what you are going to do yet?
Sure. A lot of our work is in partnership with the government and civil society, and so a lot of it maybe is work that we don't necessarily need to take credit for because we're working partnerships, so it's almost behind the scenes in a sense. We've done a lot of work recently in supporting the assistance to Syrian refugees, for example, and it's interesting to think about that because 25 years ago, again, we were supporting people that were displaced by conflict here. Now we're helping Armenia support refugees from another country that have come to Armenia. So that's been a quite visible achievement, I think. In terms of health, we've helped Armenia eliminate measles, eliminate polio, and helped eliminate mother-to-child HIV transmission. I think Armenia is one of the first, if not the first country in the world to eliminate mother-to-child HIV transmission, so it's a really big achievement. But again, these are things that we do with government, with society. Another important thing we've worked on is that we've helped Armenian society move away from this preference of boys in pregnancy to girls, preference of boys to girls in pregnancy. Which is a big issue actually, and it's a sensitive issue, but it's not just a demographic issue, but a national sort of security issue. I mean, if you have too many boys and not enough girls, how do you increase your population, right? And there's of course the problem of outward migration here, and so, but this has been a sensitive issue, but one that we've worked behind the scenes with society leaders, with the church, for example, with government, with health professionals to push this along, and we're heading into the right direction. So that's one of the things we're proud of. Another thing that we're proud of is our work in the education and nutrition fields, providing school meals to children out on the Marses. The World Food Program does this work, and it not just provides nutrition to kids, but it helps provide an incentive for the kids to come to school in the first place and learn. So these are some of the things we're doing. In terms of the future, you asked about the 2030 agenda. So that's what we call the Sustainable Development Agenda, and what that's all about is it's really a global to-do list, a global checklist for a sustainable planet. It's essentially everyone around the world, 193 countries, have signed up to the Sustainable Development Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's about eliminating poverty, eliminating hunger, eliminating inequality, but basically the checklist of what you need to make sure that we can all live on this planet in a sustainable way. And the way we think about it is that this agenda must be embraced by the country and by citizens as a way to accelerate Armenia's own development. It's not something that's an extra burden or responsibility. Of course, all the countries, including Armenia, have signed up to it, but it's rather an opportunity for Armenia to accelerate its development even further. And so we'll be helping them with that.
You spoke about partners. Who are your partners in Armenia, and in which fields do you especially need help? Some support, maybe.
Sure. Well, more than anything, I think we try to look at the United Nations here as sort of like the ultimate partnership platform or convener, or a sort of very neutral platform. We have no political agenda, right? So the only agenda is really to help Armenia develop itself. And so our partners include bilateral governments and organizations, like the European Union is a very big partner with us. The Russian Federation is a big partner, US government is, Austria, Switzerland. So we have governments on the one hand, but we also work very closely with so many civil society organizations that work in Armenia on human rights issues, on all issues, on community development in Tavush, for example. So it's across the spectrum. We work a lot directly with citizens. One of the things we're most excited about is within the last few months, we've set up what we're calling an SDG, or Sustainable Development Goal lab, the first national SDG lab in any country, anywhere in the world. And we've done that in partnership with the Center for Strategic Initiatives, which is right around the corner here under the Prime Minister's office. And what that SDG lab will be, it'll be like an accelerator for the SDGs and for development, and sort of a space for experimentation to tackle really big problems. Problems, for example, like land distribution, or the fact that tax collection is not high enough. How do you solve those problems in innovative, creative ways? And we also linked up with Stanford University to develop that lab. So this is one of the exciting new priority areas for us, to sort of leverage that entrepreneurial spirit and culture here in Armenia through much more emphasis on social venture and social entrepreneurship and innovation more generally in the next couple of years.
You spoke about long-term plans, and what are the short-term plans for the coming year for Armenia?
Well, I think one big focus certainly is that work on the SDG lab. Other projects that we're working on include a very broad program of focusing on tourism, but community-based tourism. So local communities building up their own tourism initiatives that could be around like agriculture or food, or something that's focused on that particular community. So not so much about infrastructure, but rather about making the communities attractive to tourism.
Yeah. In the times of Syrian conflict and other conflicts, may Armenia stay out of UN attention?
In a way, yes, but I mean, there are a lot of conflicts around the world. Syria is garnering a lot of attention, and so is Iraq, and so are all the crises in Africa. But that just, that means that we just have to attract attention here in a different way, and by being creative, by being innovative in the way that we think about development work, and come up with and work with new partners here. But look, Armenia is not really out of the limelight because it's been such an active player too on the global scene within the UN. What we haven't talked about yet is what we've talked about so far is what the UN has been doing for Armenia, but Armenia has also done a lot for the UN, and we could talk about that a little bit. I mean, Armenia has, for example, donated contributed troops to peacekeeping missions around the world, including in Lebanon and including in Mali. Armenia has played a big role in actually driving the sustainable development agenda in New York and with the global community, sort of setting the framework for what it is. So Armenia, for its small size, is playing a big role in the global community through the UN. Even last year, Armenia became a kind of donor country, contributed to humanitarian relief in Iraq for the Yazidi communities there. So Armenia is doing a lot within the UN, and it should be recognized for that as well.
It was going to be my next question. So about peacekeeping process, do you see Armenian troops' presence in other flashpoints of the world now?
We do, and Armenia has been really generous about that. And as I said, in Lebanon and Mali, and has expressed its willingness to contribute elsewhere. And I think Armenia has been a really intelligent and generous, let's say, participant within the global community that way. Yeah.
So it's the second year that UN development assistance framework has been in action in Armenia. So are you satisfied with the results so far? If not, why? And what do you see?
Well, I mean, that's that UN development assistance framework. That's sort of the overall strategy for what the UN is doing here, and focused on poverty reduction and provision of social services and environmental sustainability. Sure, there's some early work that's being done. We wish that, for example, that we could say that there's more progress on poverty reduction, for example. We know that that's a big emphasis of the Prime Minister and of the government, and we're supporting communities, for example, in Tavush, farming communities, helping them develop new greenhouses, new ways to bring their products to market, whether it's domestically or across the border with Georgia. We're helping in these ways, but there needs more to be done, and wish we could scale up some of these initiatives too. But we feel like we're making progress. Yes.
Yeah. And don't you consider your goals too much ambitious for Armenia?
Well, the Sustainable Development Goals are certainly ambitious, but they're necessarily ambitious if we want to really have a sustainable planet, right? But the way that I think it really should be perceived is that Armenia must, and we'll work with Armenia must shape those goals the best way possible to fit Armenia's development priorities. And that's what we're working out with the government right now, with the Prime Minister's office and with the rest of government.
Will be a success?
I hope so. Armenia, as I said, has been really engaged in developing the entire concept globally of the SDGs. So we would hope that it would be a success here. But I think key to the success, I mean, it's not about what the governments will do or what the private sector does or what the UN does, but it's rather that the citizens get really engaged about the development of their own country. And this is something that the UN has been really promoting too, and I think that's one of the things that we're most proud of, is that getting citizens themselves to solve social and development issues. And we saw that just a couple of days ago. There was a hackathon hosted by the municipality, which is pretty amazing. But we have this social venture lab called Kolba. And what we did at this hackathon is that the challenge was how to solve some of the key problems in Yerevan city. And for example, problems of building management or trash collection. And what we did is we brought together lots of the most senior IT figures in the country, plus engaged citizens, plus city officials, put them together on teams, gave them, I think, 24 hours to come up with solutions. And the winning solutions were quite interesting. One is sort of an electronic condominium management system, which helps make all the cost and expenses of condominiums much more transparent. Another one is a solution for much smarter trash collection around the city. So these are the ways in which we're engaging everyday citizens to really get involved in the development of their communities, really from the ground up. We don't think that this whole old model of sort of development work from the top down or from experts from other countries coming. We think that with the human capital in Armenia, we can solve these problems with Armenian amazing human capital and intelligence and intellect here. And just to say, people maybe have the misperception that the UN here is, just a lot of international staff and foreigners, but in fact, about probably 95% of the around 300 staff here are Armenian, right? So the motor, the engine, the intellectual engine of the UN's work is Armenian here.
What are the projects that you face some obstacles?
Oh, I mean, I think we're not having specific issues with our projects right now. It's rather, I think there's a general issue that a country that is in Armenia's position where it's a sort of middle-income country, but a lower middle-income country, doesn't attract as much financing as attention as many other countries, but that just means we have to be more creative in partnering, and we've done that recently the past few years, and we hope to continue to do it. So no particular difficulties. It's just a matter of generating the right ideas and especially generating that citizen engagement on the ground to really solve Armenia's problems and exploit opportunities in Armenia.
Do you have any messages that you would like to deliver to Armenia on behalf of UN?
Thanks. I mean, I would say embrace the Sustainable Development Goals would be one. Another one is that citizen engagement is really key to the development of the country. Experts from the UN or from any other institution won't make much of a difference unless citizens are really engaged. Another one is, I think, caring for your national endowment, your national gifts, like the rivers and the forest, and that takes, and just the landscape. That just takes behavioral change in a way, and use the country as your capital, not in a transactional sense, and including the biodiversity, and maybe think about in terms of. I mean, I'm not an economist, but in terms of economic potential going forward, think about specific niches in, for example, tourism, like community-based tourism, or biodiversity, or certain aspects of trade, like the wine industry, highly specialized sort of niches, I think, and really channel that entrepreneurial spirit that Armenia is so famous for, not just in Armenia but around the world, to develop the country, and that the UN will be in partnership with Armenia as it travels that journey.
Yeah, and how do you see Armenia's future on the perspective UN goals?
I hope that Armenia is a leader in showing the rest of the world how to really make sustainable development happen. And we're actually creating some models here through Armenian firepower and intellect that we hope to export in other countries. Like, for example, this idea of the SDG Lab. We want that to be an accelerator, not just here in Armenia, but this Armenian idea we want to export around the world so other countries can use this model to also accelerate their development. So we want Armenia to be, engaged here, but also hopefully a model for how other countries do their development too around the world.
Thank you, Mr. Busetto.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Օրակարգ հարցազրույցի հյուրը Հայաստանում ՄԱԿ-ի մշտական ներկայացուցիչ Բրեդլի Բուզետոն էր։